Why are we stopped? Look at the cliff. God.
Make sure you've got non-perishable food, plenty of water, and batteries and other supplies. And
Nearly 200,000 customers are still without power and heat in the Deep South. Something is shifting, and people across the United States are starting to feel it. Rivers surge past their limits without warning. Solid ground caves in, swallowing roads and homes as if they were never there. Winter no longer brings silence. It brings floods, ice, and darkness that lock entire towns in place. And above it all, the sky is changing. Unnatural sounds, deep trumpet like roll through the air, stopping people cold. There are no sirens, no alerts, no time to think. Only sudden collapse of land, of systems, of the belief that tomorrow will look like yesterday. These events aren't random, they're happening together. Now, do you believe these are just natural events, or could this be the kind of warning Jesus told us to watch for? Comment what you think below. The pressure did not come as a single storm. It came as a tightening grip. Arctic air spread across the land, while rivers began to rise beneath ground still locked in ice. Snow that had rested quietly on fields and hillsides suddenly released, turning into slow, heavy runoff. Rain fell onto frozen soil that could not absorb it. The water had nowhere to go. At first, the change seemed minor. Ditches filled, puddles widened, then streets darkened beneath shallow currents. Water crept across parking lots and into basements. Wooden steps softened. Pavement cracked along the edges. What had once felt solid became uncertain underfoot. For those living nearby, the threat was not dramatic, but constant. Boots lined doorways. Furniture was raised. Families lay awake listening for water pressing against walls. Along riverbanks, the land itself began to shift. Brown water slid over fields that only weeks earlier had been white with snow. Fences disappeared beneath moving sheets. Trees stood half submerged, their bare branches trembling in the current. By morning, fog lifted from flooded ground, turning neighborhoods into quiet lakes, where rooftops and street signs floated like markers in an unfamiliar world. Life adjusted as best it could. Children stayed home. Neighbors shared pumps and sandbags. Elderly residents were guided across soaked walkways. Emergency crews moved slowly through streets that no longer looked like streets. Between calls for help, people stood on porches, watching the water rise and fall, speaking softly, as if not to disturb the fragile balance. Only after the danger became real did the questions begin. When winter brings not only cold but rising water, survival comes first, meaning follows later. The unease does not begin in theory. It begins in soaked shoes, darkened rooms, and the smell of damp wood. Above the flooded ground, rain traced silver lines across the surface. Ice broke and drifted in slow circles. At sunset, light spread across flooded streets, turning them copper and gray. What unsettled many was not only the water, but how quickly it became normal. After the first shock came routine. Barriers were built, paths were memorized. In Scripture, water crossing its boundaries is never described as meaningless. Winter is meant to bring stillness and restraint, yet in this event, frozen ground produced movement and flooding instead. Isaiah 24 speaks of the earth being shaken when established order begins to fail. The meaning is not simply physical damage, but a warning about misplaced security. When seasons no longer behave as expected, the Bible frames this as a call to awareness, not panic. Winter floods reveal how fragile human assumptions of stability are. Biblically, such disruption is meant to awaken reflection, asking where trust truly rests when even the ground and seasons no longer hold. As rivers continue to press against their banks and streets mirror the sky, one question remains beneath the surface. Will people pause and recognize what these waters are revealing, or will they simply learn to live with them, ignoring the warning written plainly before their eyes? Winter has not loosened its grip, and new signs continue to surface through sinkholes and landslides. In several areas that appeared calm and untouched by the worst of the season, residents began to relax. There were no blizzards, No howling winds, no frozen highways, no scenes of chaos. Daily life seemed normal. Many believed the danger had passed. It was within that calm that disaster arrived quietly and without warning. There was no explosion, no alarm, no visible signal of threat. The ground itself, long trusted as solid, dependable, and permanent, suddenly collapsed beneath them. In moments, familiar streets vanished. Houses were pulled downward. Cars slipped into darkness as if they had never existed. Massive sinkholes opened without notice, carving deep scars into the earth. Beneath them was a vast emptiness, dark, unstable, and impossible to fully comprehend. People gathered at a distance, stunned into silence, trying to grasp that only minutes earlier the same place had been a home, a road, a path to safety. What made these events so disturbing was not only the destruction, but the total absence of warning. Unlike storms or earthquakes, which often give signs, sinkholes strike suddenly and without mercy. They stand as a stark reminder that humanity does not truly control the ground beneath its feet. At the same time, coastal regions have experienced landslides with increasing force. Cliffs, slowly worn by the ocean for decades, suddenly gave way. Large sections of land dropped into the sea, carrying trees, buildings, and history with them. Specialists point to heavy rain, shifting climate patterns, and weakened rock layers below the surface. From a scientific perspective, these explanations are reasonable. Yet for many people of faith, a deeper question remains. Why are these events happening so often, so abruptly, and so close together in time? Scripture has long warned that in the final days, even what seems secure will be shaken. Isaiah 24 speaks of the foundations of the earth being disturbed. Psalm 18 describes the earth quaking and the mountains trembling. Today's sinkholes and landslides cause many to recall these ancient words not to incite fear, but to awaken awareness. They point to a truth often overlooked. Lasting security does not come from buildings, possessions, or human systems, but from a firm foundation in God. When the ground beneath us can disappear without warning, we are forced to examine where our confidence truly lies, whether in wealth, stability, and control, or in the Creator who alone cannot be shaken. These events serve as a call to humility, vigilance, and spiritual readiness, not only to prepare our homes and communities, but to prepare our inner lives. For if even the earth can fail, then God alone remains a refuge. Across many parts of the United States, powerful winter storms formed with very little warning. What started as unstable weather quickly turned into widespread disruption. Heavy rain flooded low-lying areas. Snow accumulated rapidly in higher regions. Rivers rose, roads closed, and communities were placed under emergency alerts within hours. In several areas, daily life came to a sudden stop. Travel was disrupted, shelters filled, emergency crews struggled to keep up as conditions worsened faster than expected. These were not slow-building storms that allowed time to prepare. They arrived quickly and affected large areas at the same time. What makes these storms especially concerning is not just their strength, but where they struck. The storms spread across key agricultural regions, transportation routes, and population centers, places that support food production, supply chains, and everyday life. When severe weather hits these areas all at once, the impact goes far beyond local damage. In the Bible, famine does not begin when food disappears from shelves. It begins earlier, when the land itself can no longer produce reliably. Scripture often describes this stage as a warning when the earth shows signs of stress before a larger crisis follows. The failure of the land comes before the failure of systems. Severe storms have always existed, and winter weather is nothing new. But the real question is not whether storms will occur. This is why disruption is spreading across so many critical regions at the same time. When the foundations that sustain a nation begin to weaken together, it forces a deeper question. Is this simply a natural cycle, or is the nation's food and stability being tested now? After violent storms swept across the land, another sign appeared, this time in complete silence. Late at night, in a quiet location, a body of water that had been dark and still suddenly began to glow. The light did not come from the sky. There were no lightning flashes or reflections from above. Instead, the light rose slowly from within the water itself, spreading gently across the surface. There was no sound, no explosion, no rush of wind. The water remained calm as the light appeared, steady and controlled, lasting long enough for it to be clearly seen. It did not flicker or vanish instantly. It stayed, as if meant to be noticed. What makes this moment even more striking is how people responded. Those who witnessed it did not panic. They did not run or shout. They stood still, watching in silence. Many later said the moment felt different from fear. It felt deliberate, quiet, but impossible to ignore. In the Bible, water often represents the deep, the unknown, the place that existed before creation was fully formed. It is where chaos and possibility exist together. Light rising from water mirrors the very beginning of Scripture, when God brought light into darkness before anything else followed. Before commands, before judgment, before separation, there was light. That order matters. In Scripture, light comes first not to destroy, but to reveal. It exposes what is hidden and gives time to understand before consequences arrive. After storms shake the land and disrupt daily life, this silent light appears without force or threat. So the question remains, why does light emerge now? Is it a warning meant to awaken attention, or an invitation to recognize what is coming while there is still time to see clearly? After periods of intense rainfall, witnesses began reporting something unusual on the ground. When the water receded and the land settled, heavy stones were found standing upright. These were not stones arranged by people, nor small rocks easily moved by flowing water. They were large, dense, irregular stones, balanced in vertical positions as if carefully placed. What made the discovery unsettling was not only the position of the stones, but the absence of any clear cause. There were no signs of machinery, no tire tracks, no footprints, no evidence that anyone had been there. The surrounding ground showed no disturbance that would suggest human involvement. The stones simply stood there, unchanged, silent, and unexplained. Those who encountered the scene described a sense of unease. Stones are expected to lie flat, shaped by gravity and time. Seeing them upright, against natural expectation, disrupted that assumption. It did not look chaotic or random. It looked intentional, even though no intent could be identified. The land appeared to have rearranged itself and then gone still. In Scripture, stones are never meaningless. They are used as witnesses, reminders, and markers of important moments. Altars were built from stones. Boundaries were marked by stones. Testimonies were preserved in stone when words could fade. When stones stand, they do not shout or move. They simply remain, pointing silently to something that demands attention. This is why the sight of stones standing upright carries deeper weight. It is not the size or number that matters, but the message implied by their posture. Stones do not normally rise on their own. When they appear to stand, it suggests a moment meant to be remembered. The rain has passed, the land has settled, yet the stones remain standing, and that raises a quiet but unsettling question. Is this just a rare natural occurrence, or is creation itself beginning to testify without using words? As the sky began to shift, people lifted their eyes in fear. Across the United States, conditions are not improving, they are intensifying. What is unfolding is reaching levels many Americans have not experienced in decades. Meteorologists now warn that this winter has moved beyond what can be called unusual and has entered the realm of dangerous extremes. Each new surge of Arctic air is no longer merely uncomfortable. It is life-threatening. Across much of the North and Midwest, temperatures continue to drop day after day. Snow does not melt away, it piles up. Ice spreads relentlessly across roads, rooftops, and critical systems already stretched to their limits. Cutting winds tear through city streets, driving wind chills far below actual temperatures and making frostbite and serious injury possible within minutes. The scenes that follow are deeply unsettling. Cars are left abandoned along frozen highways. Schools and workplaces shut down completely. Entire communities become isolated as snow and ice block emergency routes for the elderly, the homeless, and families without reliable heat. This cold is no longer an inconvenience. It becomes a moment-by-moment fight to survive. What heightens the concern is that forecasts show the worst may still lie ahead. New Arctic systems are forming, threatening stronger storms, harsher winds, and longer stretches of extreme cold. Each incoming wave does more than lower temperatures. It further weakens towns, infrastructure, and the ability to endure. Amid these brutal conditions, one image has drawn attention. Small groups of people kneeling in prayer outside, exposed to the bitter cold. No stages, no organized events, no announcements. Just ordinary individuals standing against the elements, sending their prayers into frozen air. This is not performance, it is instinct, a human response to forces beyond control. That image reveals a deeper truth. When technology, forecasting, and preparation reach their limits, people are compelled to face questions of faith, humility, and dependence. This winter is proving to be more than a test of physical endurance. It is testing the spiritual and emotional stability of society itself. Officials continue to issue urgent warnings, urging residents to stay indoors, conserve power, and guard against frostbite, outages, and accidents. Yet beyond these practical instructions lies another message, quieter but more profound. Do not dismiss what is happening. Nature does not move without meaning. When cold persists and intensifies on this scale, it becomes more than a seasonal pattern. It exposes how quickly the familiar rhythm of life can be overturned. Scripture has long taught that trials in the natural world are not empty events. They are meant not only to strain the body, but to awaken the conscience. And in the midst of freezing temperatures, fear, and uncertainty, the question is no longer how severe this winter will become, but whether we are prepared for what may come next. As winter tightened its grip across the mainland and the earth showed signs of strain from below, attention slowly shifted northward, toward waters long considered distant and untouched. What followed was quieter than floods or collapsing ground, but no less unsettling. Along remote stretches of Alaska's coastline, dark, oil-like material began appearing on icy shores. Thick, tarry, unmistakably black against snow and frozen rock. There were no tankers in distress, no drilling platforms nearby, no industrial accidents reported. Authorities confirmed there were no modern oil spills to explain what was surfacing. At first, the material appeared in small patches, scattered and easily overlooked. But as reports increased, the pattern became harder to ignore. The substance was not spreading from a single source. It was emerging at multiple points along the coast, as if pushed upward rather than spilled outward. Scientists examining the phenomenon emphasized one critical detail. This was not new material. It had not been recently produced or released by human activity. Instead, evidence pointed downward. Beneath Alaska's coastal waters lie vast layers of ancient organic matter, buried deep beneath sediment, rock, and frozen ground. Some of these deposits date back thousands of years, sealed under pressure since long before modern history. Researchers believe shifts beneath the seafloor caused by changing pressure, thawing permafrost, and subtle ground movement have fractured those ancient layers. What had remained locked away for centuries was now being forced to the surface. This was not creation, it was exposure. What made the discovery especially troubling was its timing. It did not arrive in isolation. It followed reports of ground instability, collapsing foundations, and changing conditions elsewhere. The land was not simply reacting at the surface. It appeared to be releasing what it had long contained. For many observers, the question was not whether the substance posed immediate danger, but what it represented. Ancient sealed matter does not surface without cause. Pressure builds quietly over time. Release comes only when restraint fails. Scripture often describes such moments not as accidents, but as unveilings. In the book of Job, it is written, "He uncovers the deeps out of darkness and brings deep darkness to light." The emphasis is not on destruction, but revelation. What was hidden does not remain hidden forever. The appearance of oil-like residue along Alaska's frozen coast has led many to ask a deeper question, one that science alone does not answer. Why now? Why are substances buried since ancient times emerging at this moment, alongside so many other signs of instability? When the earth begins to give up what it has long held, it forces a reckoning, not only with the land beneath our feet, but with the assumption that what is sealed will always remain so. The concern is not only what has surfaced, but what else may still be waiting below, for the moment restraint finally gives way. As attention remained fixed on what was rising along distant coastlines, another discovery was unfolding quietly beneath Florida, hidden not by water or ice, but by the ground itself. For decades, maps and surveys suggested that the underground cave systems beneath the state were limited, fragmented, and well understood. That assumption is now collapsing. Beneath neighborhoods, roads, and protected land, vast empty chambers have been discovered, spaces far larger and deeper than anything previously recorded. What makes these caverns unsettling is not only their size, but how long they remained unseen. They were not uncovered by advanced scanning. They were not revealed by exploration or drilling. They came to light only when the ground above them could no longer hold. In several areas, the surface failed without warning. Streets cracked, land sank, and as it did, openings appeared, exposing hollow worlds beneath. These chambers were not newly formed. Geological analysis confirms they have existed for thousands of years, slowly carved by water moving through limestone, sealed beneath layers of earth while life continued above, unaware. This was not a discovery made by human effort. It was exposure forced by collapse. What lies beneath Florida has always been there, quietly bearing weight, supporting cities, highways, and generations of development. Over time, erosion and shifting pressure weakened the ceilings of these hidden spaces. When balance finally gave way, the underground was revealed not because it was sought, but because concealment failed. What troubles experts is not simply that these caves exist, but how extensive they are. Old maps no longer apply. Known boundaries no longer hold. The ground beneath what appeared stable is far more fragile and far more complex than once believed. The land did not announce this change. It revealed it only when failure made silence impossible. For many people of faith, this pattern feels familiar. Scripture repeatedly teaches that what is hidden does not remain hidden forever. In the book of Daniel, it is written, "He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in darkness." The emphasis is not on human discovery, but on revelation truths emerging when the time arrives. Job echoes this theme, stating that the earth itself gives up what it has long concealed. The message is consistent. Concealment is temporary. Exposure comes when pressure reaches its limit. What is happening beneath Florida is more than a geological adjustment. It is a reminder entire worlds can exist below the surface, unseen until the moment they are forced into view. When the ground itself begins to uncover what it once protected, the question shifts from what was hidden to why it is being revealed now. And if structures buried for thousands of years are emerging only because the surface can no longer contain them, it leaves one thought difficult to ignore: how much more lies beneath, waiting for the moment when concealment is no longer possible. As attention shifted from what was being exposed beneath the surface in Florida, another phenomenon began to emerge farther inland, one that unsettled witnesses not because of violence, but because of restraint. In Colorado, reports did not describe collapse, rupture, or destruction. Instead, people began describing movement. There was no violent shaking, no cracking ground, no landslides or sudden failure. What witnesses observed was far quieter and far more difficult to explain. Across different locations and elevations, individuals reported the ground rising and settling in a slow, even rhythm. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. The motion was gentle, measured, and consistent, as if the land itself were adjusting. Those who stood on it said it did not feel chaotic. It felt deliberate. Many struggled to find words. Again and again, the same description appeared. It was like breathing. The ground did not break apart. It did not give way beneath weight. Instead, it lifted slightly, then released. Over and over, steady enough to be felt, subtle enough to escape immediate alarm. What made the reports difficult to dismiss was their consistency. Witnesses unfamiliar with one another, standing miles apart, described the same sensation with the same language. Equally unsettling was what did not accompany the movement. There were no earthquakes recorded, no seismic alerts, no volcanic activity. Instruments that typically explain motion at that scale showed nothing abnormal. Geologists suggested possibilities: pressure redistribution, groundwater shifts, slow crustal adjustment, but even they acknowledged the irregularity. The movement was too smooth, too synchronized, too controlled. In Scripture, mountains are often portrayed as symbols of permanence, what humans assume will never move. Yet the Bible also records moments when mountains respond, not with collapse, but with reaction. The prophet Nahum writes that, "The mountains tremble before him, and the hills melt." The language is not of destruction, but of response creation, reacting to a greater presence. The Psalms echo this imagery, describing hills moving not in chaos, but in awareness. The emphasis is not on breaking apart, but on motion with purpose. Even Habakkuk speaks of God standing, measuring the earth, and only then do the mountains move. Measurement precedes change. What people are witnessing in Colorado does not resemble disaster. It resembles preparation. Not an ending, but an adjustment. Not a collapse, but a loosening. Not violence, but readiness. When even the most stable parts of the landscape refuse to remain completely still, it challenges a deep assumption that everything beneath us is settled, fixed, and finished. If mountains long regarded as immovable can shift quietly without warning, Scripture suggests this is not random. It is a signal. And it leaves behind a question that grows harder to ignore. What kind of season are we living in, when the land itself appears to be preparing for something yet to come? What unsettled people most was not what they could see, but what they could hear. Across multiple regions, reports began to surface of a sound coming from the sky, low, sustained, and unmistakably different from anything familiar. It was not thunder. It did not crash and fade. It did not follow lightning or storm systems. Instead, it lingered. The sound was deep, prolonged, resonant. It rolled through the air with weight, not violence. Those who heard it described the same reaction. People stopped where they stood. Conversations broke off mid-sentence. Movement slowed. Heads lifted upward, not out of curiosity, but instinct. Something about the sound triggered silence. Not confusion, not panic, silence. Many said the feeling came before the thought. A tightening in the chest, a sudden awareness, an unspoken sense that this was not ordinary noise. The reaction was not learned or discussed. It was immediate and shared, a warning felt rather than explained. What made the phenomenon difficult to dismiss was its character. Thunder is chaotic, wind howls, machinery hums. This sound was none of those. It was steady, focused, purposeful. Some described it as metallic, others as hollow. Again and again, the same word appeared: trumpet. In Scripture, the trumpet is never background noise. It is not used for atmosphere or entertainment. It is a signal, a call, a moment meant to interrupt normal life. Jesus himself warned that before the end, there would be signs not only on the earth, but in the sky, events that would cause nations to be distressed and people to be perplexed. For those familiar with Scripture, the sound carried a deeper weight. The book of Revelation describes trumpets not as music, but as announcements. Each trumpet marks a moment of awakening, a dividing line between before and after. They are not blown to entertain humanity, but to confront it. That is why the reaction was so visceral. People did not cheer. They did not record at first. They listened. They stood still. Something ancient within them recognized the tone. When the sky produces a sound that halts movement and draws eyes upward, it bypasses logic and speaks directly to conscience. This was not fear born of chaos. It was fear born of meaning. The question raised by these sounds is not whether they can be explained, but why they affect people the way they do, why the response is so immediate, why silence follows. Scripture suggests that when such signs appear, they are not meant to terrify, but to awaken, to pull attention away from routine and towards something greater. When the trumpet sounds, it is not asking for applause. It is asking for attention. And the most unsettling part is not the sound itself, but how deeply the human spirit seems to recognize it. Jesus had warned that a time would come when the world would feel unfamiliar, not because it had ended, but because its order had begun to strain. His words were not framed as fear-driven predictions, but as signs meant to be recognized. In the Gospels, Jesus speaks of days when the earth and sky would no longer behave as expected, when creation itself would respond in ways that disrupt routine and certainty. He warned that there would be signs in the heavens and distress among nations, not isolated events, but pressures arriving together. The warning was not about curiosity or spectacle. It was about awareness. Jesus described moments when people would carry on with ordinary life, unaware that deeper forces were moving beneath the surface. The danger, he said, was not the signs themselves, but the blindness that causes people to ignore them. Throughout Scripture, disruption is often used as a form of revelation. When boundaries fail and foundations shift, it exposes where trust has been misplaced. Jesus echoed this theme when he spoke of houses built on sand and rock. The storm does not create weakness, it reveals it. When the storm comes, only what is firmly grounded remains standing. Jesus also warned that these signs would not come with clarity or comfort. He said confusion would spread, hearts would grow heavy, and fear would rise because the familiar rhythms of life would no longer hold. Yet he did not speak these words to terrify. He spoke them to prepare. He told his followers to watch, not panic, to discern, not dismiss. In the book of Luke, Jesus makes it clear that the signs are not random, they are signals. When creation reacts, it is not acting independently, but responding within limits set by God. Scripture consistently shows that the natural world reflects spiritual realities. When restraint weakens in one, it echoes in the other. Revelation expands on this warning through imagery of trumpets and shaking foundations. These are not symbols of entertainment or myth. They represent moments when God interrupts human self-assurance. The trumpet in Scripture is a call to attention, a line drawn between indifference and response. It demands awareness before judgment, reflection before consequence. Jesus warned that many would see these signs and still continue as before. Life would go on, commerce would continue, distractions would multiply. And yet, he said, those who understand would recognize the season, not the date, but the meaning. Not the hour, but the direction. The central message of Jesus' warning is not destruction, but decision. Signs are not given to predict timelines, but to expose hearts. They ask where confidence truly rests. In systems, in stability, or in God alone. Jesus ended his warning with a call to posture, not fear. When these things begin to happen, he said, lift your heads. Not because the world is ending, but because accountability and redemption are drawing near. The warning remains now, pressing every generation to choose attentiveness over denial. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and keep an eye out for our next video. Leave a comment and let us know what you think.
Tonight, the nor'easter slamming much of the east at this Washington, D.C. to Philadelphia, New York to Boston. Hundreds of accidents tonight from the Midwest to the Northeast.
A series of shocking and unprecedented events has erupted across the United States, each more disturbing. From violent storms ripping through the East Coast, to strange creatures spotted on snowy mountain ridges, to angelic figures appearing in the clouds, the nation is witnessing signs that feel almost biblical. Yellowstone is stirring, ancient structures are emerging beneath the ocean, and mysterious shapes are forming in the sky as if creation itself is trying to speak. More and more people are asking the same haunting question: is Jesus warning us? Before we break down every sign and uncover what they could mean for America's future, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay watchful for what comes next. It began as a cold front sliding across the Midwest. Nothing unusual for early winter until the system collided with a surge of Atlantic moisture and transformed into a monstrous nor'easter, unlike anything meteorologists had projected. Within hours, the storm exploded from Kentucky to New England, swallowing entire states beneath a towering wall of snow, ice, and roaring wind. Radar images showed a spiraling mass stretching hundreds of miles across the map, a perfect white cyclone tightening around the nation's most populated corridor. Even veteran forecasters admitted they had rarely seen atmospheric pressure drop this fast. Something felt different. By dawn, more than 20 million Americans were placed under severe weather alerts. Cities braced as schools closed, airports shut down, and highways turned into a battlefield of frozen chaos. Along the iconic I-95, the storm unleashed devastation. Semi-trucks toppled like toys under crosswinds. SUVs slid sideways into guardrails. Smaller cars spun helplessly into deep, snow-filled ditches. Police scanners crackled non-stop with reports pileups, jackknifed rigs, stranded families, vehicles buried beneath blowing drifts. Emergency responders struggled to reach victims as the blizzard's intensity smothered visibility to almost zero. Residents from Virginia to Maine described the same terrifying sound, the howl of a wind that seemed alive, pushing against houses with fists of ice, rattling windows, and bending trees to the breaking point. In coastal towns, the ocean surged over seawalls, flooding streets with frigid, debris-filled water. Power grids buckled under the weight of ice-laden lines, plunging neighborhoods into darkness as temperatures plummeted. Some communities reported thundersnow, violent flashes of lightning inside the blizzard clouds, turning the sky an eerie electric blue. It felt apocalyptic. Meteorologists labeled it a once-in-a-generation nor'easter, not only for its strength but for the speed at which it had intensified, defying models and baffling experts. They warned that storms behaving like this were rare, far too rare to be ignored. As the nation watched, shaken and unprepared, a sobering question spread across social media. Why is this happening? Why now? For many Christians and prophecy watchers, the storm felt less like a meteorological accident and more like a spiritual message. They pointed to Luke 21:25, where Jesus foretold a time when there would be distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. To them, this nor'easter was not just a natural disaster, it was a sign in the weather, one of the birth pains described in Scripture as the world moves toward the end of the age. The symbolism was impossible to ignore. Waves roaring over the East Coast, wind screaming like a living force, millions caught in fear and confusion. And all of it happening amid other strange signs emerging across America, creatures appearing in snowy mountains, angelic figures seen in the sky, Yellowstone stirring beneath the earth. The convergence felt uncanny, as if creation itself was sending a warning. As the storm finally began to weaken, the damage across the East Coast was undeniable. But the deeper impact, the spiritual unease it awakened, was even stronger. Many were left wondering, was this just a storm? Or was it a message the nation desperately needed to hear before even greater events unfold? The mountains were silent that morning, just wind, snow, and the rhythmic crunch of boots when two hikers spotted something that froze them in place. Far across the Montana-Wyoming ridge, two shapes emerged through the blowing powder. At first glance, they looked like shadows, distorted by distance. But within seconds it became clear. These figures were standing upright, and they were moving with a precision no wild animal should possess. The hikers steadied their camera. What appeared on the screen was almost unbelievable. Two towering, reptile-like beings walking confidently on two legs, their long tails swinging subtly behind them for balance. Even at a distance, their movements were unmistakable, fluid, coordinated, almost predatory. Nothing in North America walks like that. Nothing alive today, at least. Their estimated height between 7 and 9 feet only deepened the shock. As the pair traversed the ridge, snow burst beneath their steps, dispersing naturally in real time. Their shadows stretched across the slope at the correct angle. This wasn't a trick of light. This wasn't a random glitch. The environment responded to them. Moments later, a sound rolled through the valley, low, guttural, and metallic, unlike the cry of any elk, wolf, or bear. Hikers described it as a noise that seemed to vibrate inside their ribs. Whatever these beings were, they were not quiet, and they were not ordinary. The footage spread globally within hours. Some labeled it the clearest evidence yet of an undocumented species surviving in remote wilderness. Paleontologists dismissed it as misidentification, yet they struggled to provide a convincing alternative. Others claimed it had to be a hoax until animation experts noted that the creature's weight distribution, muscle movement, and environmental interaction would require an impossibly expensive and technically perfect special effects setup. But for a growing number of watchers, the question was no longer biological. It was spiritual. They pointed to Matthew 24, where Jesus warns of fearful sights appearing before the end of the age. Could creation itself be revealing something long hidden? Could the boundaries between past and present, between natural and supernatural, be thinning? The timing only makes the mystery deeper. First, a historic nor'easter devoured the East Coast. Then, days later, these towering beings appeared on snow-covered mountains. And shortly after, witnesses across Colorado reported a radiant, human-shaped figure walking across storm clouds. To many, these events don't feel isolated, they feel connected. Whatever these creatures were, their presence in the frozen wilderness raises questions that science alone cannot answer. Continue watching, because what follows next in this chain of events is even stranger and far more unsettling. Only days after the shocking sighting of the dinosaur-like creatures in the snow, an event that already left the nation unsettled, another phenomenon emerged. This time high above the clouds of Colorado. Many described it as if the sky itself was responding to what had been seen on the earth. What appeared next was not a beast, not a storm, but something that felt almost opposite in nature. A radiant, humanoid figure walking across the top of a thundercloud during sunset. The moment began quietly. Thunderheads piled into the horizon, layered with gold and violet as the sun dropped behind the mountains. Families stepped outside to film the approaching storm, unaware that they were seconds away from witnessing an image that would send chills across the internet. When a bolt of lightning flashed behind the cloud wall, it illuminated a bright silhouette, upright, human-shaped, unmistakably walking. The figure was not distorted like a shadow. It held a clear outline, glowing along the edges as if lit from within. Each step left behind a faint shimmer, traces of light drifting across the upper cloud layer before dissolving. What made the moment impossible to dismiss was repetition. Dozens of recordings from different towns captured the same figure in the same position, moving with the same measured steps. This eliminated the possibility of camera tricks or reflection. Witnesses reacted in ways that mirrored the emotional shock triggered by the ridge creature footage, but with a different energy, one of reverence rather than fear. Some felt compelled to kneel. Others whispered prayers without thinking. Several individuals described hearing a trumpet-like hum, low but resonant, humming through the air like a distant horn. One witness said the sound felt as if the sky itself was breathing. Then came the wave of biblical comparisons. Those who had been discussing the Montana-Wyoming creature sighting now turned their attention to a different set of scriptures. Ezekiel 1, describing luminous beings above the firmament. Revelation 14, portraying angels moving across the heavens in the final days. Luke 21, foretelling signs in the sun, moon, and sky. The combination of earthbound anomalies and celestial phenomena felt too synchronized to ignore. Skeptics quickly offered explanations: optical illusion, atmospheric reflection, military projection, yet none matched the evidence. The cloud height alone, towering nearly 40,000 feet, made projection impossible. Ice crystal theories collapsed under the consistency of the recordings. Meteorologists admitted they could not identify any natural mechanism capable of producing a stable humanoid form at that altitude. And so the question returned, echoing from the storm-ravaged East Coast, from the snowy mountains, and now from the skies themselves. Is something trying to get our attention? For many, this glowing figure was not just another unexplained event. It felt like a counterpoint to the chaos seen on the ground. If the creatures in Part 2 stirred fear, this moment stirred awe. If the nor'easter felt like nature shaking the nation awake, this figure felt like a warning spoken gently, yet unmistakably from above. Whatever it was, one truth is undeniable. The heavens are no longer silent, and the timing of these signs seems anything but accidental. While strange signs were appearing in the sky and across the snowy mountains, another warning was rising, not from above or the wilderness, but from deep beneath the earth. Yellowstone, long believed by many to be a quiet sleeping giant, has begun to show unsettling signs of life. Scientists insist it's not erupting, but even they admit something significant is happening under the surface. For several years now, Yellowstone has been experiencing a persistent uplift of 1–2 inches per year. At first, researchers treated it as a minor geological fluctuation, but the uplift has continued, steady and unrelenting, causing parts of the ground to bulge like something pressing from below. And beneath that rising earth lie two massive magma chambers, containing enough molten material to fill the Grand Canyon not once, but 11 times. If even a fraction of that volume moves upward, the consequences could alter the continent. The warning signs are stacking up. Microquakes, hundreds of them, ripple through the region, often too small to feel but too frequent to ignore. new hotspots appear along trails that were once stable. The Steamboat Geyser, the world's tallest active geyser, has become hyperactive, erupting far more often than its historical average. Park rangers have quietly admitted that some geysers are behaving in ways they've never recorded before. But the most disturbing sign of all comes from the people who live closest to Yellowstone. Residents have reported hearing a strange, continuous harmonic hum, a deep, low vibration that seems to resonate through the ground at night. Seismologists recognize this sound. It resembles a phenomenon known as harmonic tremor, a signal often associated with magma moving within a volcanic system. To those familiar with volcanoes, it is the Earth's version of a warning breath. Even wildlife appears to sense it. Bison, elk, and wolves have been spotted migrating out of the area in unusual patterns, abandoning regions they once used year-round. Animals often detect danger long before humans do, and Yellowstone's animals seem to be leaving. For prophecy watchers, the signs are unmistakable. Several Christian voices have warned that a great shaking will rise from the heart of America, echoing Old Testament descriptions of the earth trembling before major spiritual turning points. The imagery found in Joel and Revelation, columns of smoke, darkened skies, and fire suddenly feels less symbolic and more literal. And the consequences of a large eruption are chilling. A major Yellowstone event would send ash blankets across entire states, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, burying them under thick gray powder. The skies could darken for weeks. Transportation systems and food supplies would collapse. Volcanic ash entering the upper atmosphere could trigger a volcanic winter, disrupting global agriculture and plunging the world into crisis. This isn't internet speculation. It is confirmed scientific modeling. To many believers, the rising pressure beneath Yellowstone feels like something more than geology. It feels like the earth itself is trembling with a message, a spiritual shaking meant to wake a nation drifting farther from God. If you want to follow these unfolding signs with us, make sure to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Long before the storm systems and strange sky phenomena captured America's attention, researchers mapping the ocean floor off the U.S. coast stumbled upon something that defied every expectation. What began as a routine sonar sweep for geological study turned into one of the most startling marine discoveries in decades. A vast, terraced stone structure hidden beneath the waves, stretching farther than the drone cameras could capture in a single pass. The sonar images first revealed a pattern that immediately raised alarms. Perfectly straight lines, right angles, and layered platforms arranged with architectural precision. Natural formations rarely form straight geometry and never in repeating patterns. Skeptics suggested it might be a collapsed volcanic shelf until the dive drones descended and sent back visuals that left the entire team silent. What appeared on the screens looked unmistakably man-made. Giant stone steps, each carved with near-identical dimensions, broad plaza-like terraces, and long, broken columns lying scattered like the remains of some forgotten monument. The stone surfaces had smooth planes, too smooth to be accidental. Some sections bore what looked like quarry marks, long, straight grooves cut into the rock as if shaped by tools, not by time or water erosion. The deeper the drones explored, the more the site resembled the blueprint of an ancient city swallowed by the sea. And then came the age analysis. Sediment layers indicated the structure had been underwater for more than 10,000 years, predating known civilizations in the Americas by thousands of years. For archaeologists, this was almost unthinkable. For historians, it challenged foundational timelines. For theologians, it awakened ancient memories of a world that existed before the flood. The comparisons to Atlantis surfaced instantly, though some researchers hesitated to use the term. Yet the resemblance was undeniable: terraces, seawalls, and what looked like foundations of enormous buildings. Some theorized it could be linked to a pre-flood civilization, echoing the mysterious societies described briefly in Genesis before the world-changing deluge. The idea that something advanced once stood upon that site and was later buried under rising waters sparked debates across academic circles. Meanwhile, pastors and prophetic teachers offered.
They are heart-wrenching 911 calls from the horrific flash flood emergency in Texas. People...
A wave of terrifying phenomena has erupted across the United States, events so extraordinary that millions now ask whether these are mere coincidences or divine warnings echoing Scripture itself. A monstrous sea creature rising from the deep, trumpet-like blast shaking the sky, and a burning sinkhole tearing open the earth as if unveiling a gate to the underworld, all appearing in rapid succession. As scientists struggle to offer explanations, biblical scholars point to ancient prophecies unfolding in real time. Are these the signs Jesus spoke of in Matthew 24? The signals of a world approaching its final chapter? Before we begin, make sure to like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. The first sign did not fall from the sky nor shake the foundations of the earth. It rose from the deep, the very realm Scripture often describes as the boundary between the seen and the unseen. Just after dawn, as a pale glow brushed the Pacific horizon, fishermen noticed the waters beneath them, shifting in a way they had never witnessed. What began as a quiet disturbance soon grew into a violent heaving, as though the sea itself were being forced open. Then it emerged. A creature longer than any known whale, heavier than any recorded shark, erupted from the deep, with a powerful fish-like tail, thick and muscular, striking the surface like a war drum. As it lifted its enormous body free from the water, sunlight hit its scales, causing them to shimmer like molten metal, bright enough to sting the eyes of the men watching. Its head resembled something prehistoric, but more sinister. A row of jagged teeth curved outward like broken spears, each one reflecting light like polished steel. Biblical scholars immediately pointed to Leviathan, the mysterious sea creature described in Psalm 104-26 as one God formed to move through the deep at his command. Others reference Job 41, where the creature's might is so great that no one is fierce enough to rouse him, a being described not merely as part of creation, but as an instrument revealing God's power over the chaotic waters. The fishermen insisted the creature's behavior was unlike anything natural. It did not flee, it did not attack. It watched circling slowly, remaining just close enough for them to feel its awareness. To many, this was the most unsettling aspect. Its deliberate, almost purposeful movements, as if acknowledging the witnesses chosen to see it. Hours before the beast appeared, residents along the coast had already sensed something wrong beneath the waves. Deep hums, rhythmic pulses, and vibrations rising through the hulls of their boats. These disturbances matched pressure anomalies recorded in seismic zones, hinting that whatever stirred the earth might also be stirring the sea. When the footage spread online, public reaction divided sharply. Some claimed it was a biological rarity, a remnant of deep-sea evolution forced upward by geological shifts. Yet others saw the timing, the behavior, and the prophetic symbolism and concluded something different. This was not random, this was a sign. The Old Testament repeatedly links the sea to moments of divine revelation. Moses crossing the Red Sea, Jonah swallowed by the great fish, and the Psalms declaring God's sovereignty over the deep. In that context, the creature's appearance felt less like an accident and more like a message. And so the question that echoed throughout the nation carried a weight far beyond science. Did this being rise because of natural forces, or because the heavens allowed it? The creature had barely disappeared beneath the waves when the second sign arrived, this time not from the sea, but from the very earth beneath America's feet. Within just hours of the shocking footage, reports began pouring in from multiple U.S. coastlines. The ground was rising, shifting, and breathing, as if something below was pushing upward. In Oregon, one homeowner noticed the tiles in her kitchen bend slightly upward, creating a soft arc that vanished the next morning. In Southern California, beachgoers felt a strange upward pressure under the sand, as though the shoreline were swelling like a lung. But the most alarming incident occurred along a quiet neighborhood near the Pacific coast, where the soil beneath several homes lifted just enough to tilt furniture and crack baseboards. These strange movements echoed a documented event in Bayview, San Francisco, where a resident's apartment floor rose nearly an inch, all without earthquakes, storms, or construction activity. That moment baffled engineers, but now, with the same phenomenon appearing in multiple states, a pattern was emerging. Moisture levels inland surged unexpectedly. Sensors that once showed normal readings suddenly reported accelerating groundwater pressure, mimicking the very crisis unfolding in San Francisco. There, scientists had long warned that the massive seawall project built to protect the city was unintentionally forcing water upward through layers of weak soil. Now, similar symptoms were appearing hundreds of miles away. Dry regions felt damp, basements began sweating, roads developed soft patches after weeks without rain, and then came the sideways shifts. Highway maintenance crews in Dogpatch had once recorded movements so subtle it seemed meaningless, only a few millimeters. But that was before multiple towns across America reported the same unsettling drift roads that veered, sidewalks that nudged, painted lines that no longer aligned with their original paths, like a giant hand beneath the surface pushing the land in slow, rhythmic pulses. When geologists overlaid the timing of these events with the creature's appearance offshore, the correlation was undeniable. Something deep within the earth was responding, something strong enough to distort foundations, redirect groundwater, and tilt entire structures. Pastors across the nation turned to Isaiah 24:19. The earth is utterly broken. It is shaken exceedingly. What terrified people was not the shaking itself after all. America is familiar with earthquakes. It was the source. This was not seismic, not natural, not random. It felt intelligent. Whispers spread quickly. Is the land reacting to the same unseen forces that drove the creature from the deep? Is something rising that humanity cannot yet see? And if these signs are only the beginning, what comes next? Don't look away now. What happens in part 3 will change everything. Tap like, drop your thoughts below, and continue with the next segment. Late in the afternoon, as sunlight turned copper over the western horizon, residents across California, Nevada, and Texas reached for their phones in confusion. A deep, resonant blast rolled across the air, long, metallic, and unmistakably intentional. It sounded nothing like thunder, nothing like aircraft, nothing like any natural atmospheric event they had ever experienced. It sounded like a trumpet. The first recordings came from a quiet suburb near Los Angeles. For nearly 3 minutes, the sky groaned with a sustained horn-like vibration that caused windows to tremble in their frames. Dogs across the neighborhood began to whine, pace, and hide beneath tables. Birds launched from trees in frantic spirals, abandoning their usual evening flight patterns. Then, just as the sound faded, a strange stillness settled, heavy, electric, expectant. Within the hour, the same phenomenon erupted again, this time in Reno, Nevada. Commuters pulled over on the highway as the air itself seemed to vibrate. Some described the sound as ancient, others as mechanical, but all agreed it felt directed, as if the sky were issuing a warning. And then came Texas. In towns still recovering from the devastating July flash flood, where unstable atmospheric pressure had triggered deadly surges of rainfall, residents heard the identical horn-like blast echoing across the clouds. Many immediately drew parallels. The sound appeared during the same type of pressure shifts that preceded the catastrophic event. Meteorologists reviewing early data noticed subtle distortions in upper atmospheric layers, ripples that did not match typical storm patterns. Something, it seemed, was pressing against the atmosphere from above or within, something more than weather. Animals sensed it first. Cats arched and bolted for shelter. Horses kicked against their stalls. Ranch dogs refused to leave their owners' sides. Even elevators in downtown buildings slowed temporarily, their sensors momentarily confused by the subtle but detectable shift in environmental pressure. These were the same symptoms documented near California's geothermal fields, where human-induced seismicity had once produced faint but measurable distortions in the air and ground. But this time, there was no drilling, no seismic release, no machinery, only the sky and the sound. As the recording spread online, biblical scholars pointed immediately to 1 Thessalonians 4:16. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet of God. The verse, long studied as part of end-time prophecy, suddenly felt less symbolic and more literal. Across living rooms, churches, and classrooms, people played the recordings again and again, each time with the same uneasy question: are these the sounds of nature, or the opening notes of something divine? Some described an overwhelming sense of presence during the blasts, as though unseen forces were moving just beyond the veil of the visible sky. Others felt dread, still others felt awe. But none could dismiss the collective instinct rising across the nation. These trumpets were not random. They were not accidental. They were not of human origin. Many began to believe the blasts marked the beginning of a prophetic call, a signal that the sequence of signs, sea, earth, and now sky, was accelerating. And with each new sound, the invisible boundary between the physical world and the spiritual realm seemed to grow thinner, as if preparing for an announcement the world had not heard in millennia. When the final trumpet blast dissolved into silence, an eerie calm settled over the Midwest. For a few strange seconds, the air felt heavy, so heavy that several witnesses later said it felt as if the sky itself were holding its breath. But it was not the heavens preparing to move, it was the earth. Minutes after the sound faded, a low rumble vibrated through a quiet rural town. Residents first thought it was a large truck approaching, but the sound deepened, spreading through the soil like a pulse. Then the ground began to rise and fall, not violently, but rhythmically, exactly like the breathing earth phenomenon documented in San Francisco when groundwater pressure surged behind the city's seawall. Several people stepped outside in confusion. They watched as cracks formed along the pavement, widening with unnatural symmetry. The ground swelled once, twice, and then collapsed. A colossal sinkhole tore open the earth, spiraling downward as if something massive had clawed its way up from below. Dust exploded into the air, spiraling in a vortex, the same pattern geologists recorded during the strange lateral soil shifts in Dogpatch. But before anyone could process what was happening, the bottom of the pit ignited. A column of fire rose into the sky. It wasn't the random flicker of dry brush or the typical ignition of methane. The flames shot straight upward, narrow and focused, as if drawn by an invisible force. The heat shimmered in unnerving patterns, twisting into shapes that reminded many of the imagery in Revelation 9, where the abyss opens and smoke rises as from a great furnace. At time abyss. Some witnesses described hearing a deep metallic resonance emanating from inside the hole. Nothing like wind, nothing like gas. A vibration, a hum, a tone, almost musical. Scientists, rushed to comment, pointed to methane pockets in deep sediment layers. But methane does not create spiraling flame vortices. Methane does not follow rhythmic pulses. And methane does not align with pressure charts nearly identical to the sideways groundwater shifts Berkeley researchers identified months earlier in California. This was not geological randomness. Not according to the people who stood there and felt the heat. Locals insisted the hole felt summoned, as though the earth had responded to the trumpet blast the same way the seas responded to the creature rising earlier that morning. Many spoke of being overwhelmed by a sensation of presence, a feeling that something ancient and unseen had awakened beneath the crust. Even skeptics were shaken. The symmetry, the timing, the fire, the sound, it all pointed to a pattern far beyond normal tectonic activity. And as people watched the flames twist higher, illuminating the clouds in orange and crimson, a chilling thought spread through the crowd. If this is the third sign, what happens when the fourth arrives? If this shook you, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for the next chapter. Even before the sea creature rose, even before the trumpet blast rolled across the sky, sensors buried deep beneath California were already warning that something far older, far deeper had begun to stir. The Clear Lake volcanic field, a region long studied but rarely feared, suddenly erupted with activity. Not with magma or ash, but with micro-tremors, thousands of them rippling through the crust month after month. These tremors were not the typical quakes familiar to the West. They followed no predictable pattern, arriving in clusters, fading, then returning with greater intensity. The source pointed not to natural tectonic movement, but to the geothermal infrastructure woven into the bedrock. For decades, wells had been drilled deep into the earth to harness its heat. Water was injected, steam extracted, pressure regulated. It was a system designed for control. But now, the readings showed something else. The ground was acting on its own. Monitoring teams across Clear Lake noticed a disturbing alignment in the data. The spikes in tremors matched the exact timeline of the sea creature's emergence offshore and the trumpet-like blasts reported across the western sky. 3 separate events, oceanic, atmospheric, and subterranean, appearing in synchrony, as though responding to a single unseen pulse. Residents living above the tremor clusters began reporting strange sensations. Floors shifting gently beneath their feet, cabinet doors trembling at dawn, walls producing soft knocks in the middle of the night. These were the same symptoms communities near geothermal sites had experienced during episodes of induced seismicity, but this time felt different, deeper, stronger, more coordinated. Not like isolated reactions to human infrastructure, but like the crust itself was entering a new cycle of instability. Geologists reviewing the data privately admitted that the earth beneath Clear Lake was reorganizing, shifting pressure and redistributing energy in ways their models had never accounted for. Some suspected that decades of tapping into the volcanic field had disrupted a delicate balance. Others felt certain the system was tapping into a natural process far beyond human influence. Across churches and prayer groups, the discussion took a prophetic turn. Romans 8:22 echoed through sermons and conversations. Creation groans and suffers birth pains. For many, the tremors felt exactly like that groaning. A world straining, a planet responding not just to physical forces, but to the unfolding of events that appeared increasingly biblical in scope. The idea spread quickly. Perhaps the tremors were not random mechanical shocks, but precursors, signals that the deep earth was awakening in harmony with the sea and sky. Each realm reacting, each realm shifting, and in between them all, humanity, witnessing the first movements of a pattern older than civilization itself. While scientists scrambled to explain the shaking earth and the roaring sky, another kind of report began to surface, quiet at first, whispered across prayer groups and midnight church meetings. But as the hours passed, the whispers grew into testimonies, and the testimonies into something impossible to ignore. If the land and sea were sending warnings, the heavens were now sending messengers. It began in a small church in Northern California during a late-night prayer service. The congregation had gathered to seek comfort after the strange trumpet sounds earlier that day. The sanctuary was dim, lit only by soft wall lamps. As the people prayed, a sudden brilliance pierced the room. A narrow pillar of white light descended from the ceiling, stretching downward until it touched the space near the altar. Several witnesses gasped. The light did not flicker like electricity, nor did it spread like a spotlight. It stood still, shimmering with a purity impossible to describe. Slowly, the edges of the pillar curved, taking shape, forming what appeared to be the outline of a human figure. Shoulders, wings, a bowed head, an angel. Before anyone could speak, a soft wind drifted through the sanctuary. Papers fluttered. A few leaves on a floral arrangement rustled, but the windows were closed. The doors were locked. The room was sealed, yet the wind carried a warmth that settled into the skin, calming fear, dissolving panic. Many felt tears rise without understanding why. Down the hallway, a choir was rehearsing in another room. Suddenly, their voices were joined by harmonics they did not produce. Notes layered themselves above the melody, clear, resonant, impossibly precise. Not human, not recorded. A sound like 1,000 soft bells woven into a single tone. The choir director collapsed to her knees, overwhelmed. Word spread quickly through the congregation. People rushed into the main sanctuary, only to find the air itself glowing faintly, a soft golden haze floating above the pews. Witnesses described the sensation as standing inside a living light, warm, weightless, and overflowing with peace. Some reported feeling hands on their shoulders, though no one stood behind them. A pastor stepped forward, trembling, but with certainty. "Church, we are not alone in this moment." His voice broke as he read aloud, "He will command his angels concerning you, to guard you in all your ways." The specited non-redim. Many fell to their knees. Others lifted their hands. A few simply stood silent, undone by what their eyes beheld. For the first time since the strange events began, the fear that had gripped communities softened. There was awe, wonder, a reassurance that heaven was not distant but responding. Across the nation, similar reports emerged, each different in detail but identical. In essence, light, warmth, sound, presence, a pattern, a message, a reminder. If creation was groaning, heaven was answering. If this moment moved you, let us know your thoughts in the comments, and remember to like and subscribe to support the message. Long after the floodwaters receded, The memory of the Texas catastrophe should have faded into the background of history. Yet it has surged back into national conversation not because of new rainfall, but because recent atmospheric behavior is beginning to mirror the same patterns that preceded the disaster. Scientists reviewing current anomalies point to a set of warning signals nearly identical to those detected in Texas before the deadly flash flood. Sudden drops in barometric pressure, abrupt humidity spikes, and the formation of turbulent air pockets that defy seasonal expectations. Across multiple states, residents have begun witnessing storms that materialize without warning, forming over regions that have remained bone dry for weeks. Radar images show clouds clustering in tight, unnatural spirals, behavior normally seen during peak storm seasons, not during quiet transitional months. Meteorologists admit that the condensation rates in these storms resemble the off-season moisture anomalies recorded in San Francisco basements, where groundwater inexplicably rose despite the absence of rainfall. It suggests that water, both above and below the surface, is now behaving outside natural cycles. Emergency managers in the Midwest report rainfall that intensifies from a light drizzle to a violent downpour in minutes, overwhelming drainage systems designed for far stronger storms. In some towns, streets transform into rivers in less than an hour. Residents are left staring at weather that feels increasingly reactive, almost alive. Many recall how, during the Texas disaster, the water rose so quickly that escape routes vanished in moments. Now, they see the same unpredictability reappearing on a broader scale. As reports accumulate, biblical scholars draw attention to Luke 21:25. A verse long associated with end-time environmental disturbance. There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars, and on the earth distress of nations with perplexity because of the roaring of the sea and the waves. For many, the verse no longer feels symbolic. The perplexity mentioned aligns eerily with the current scientific confusion. The distress of nations mirrors the mounting anxiety in communities watching familiar environments turn volatile. And the roaring of the sea and waves resonates with not only ocean turbulence, but also the chaotic surges of inland waters that behave as though driven by unseen hands. Some pastors suggest that the sudden return of Texas-like conditions is not a coincidence but a repetition with purpose, a divine reminder of unresolved warnings. If the sea creature marked a disturbance in the deep and the trumpet-like blast signaled atmospheric unrest, then these violent surges of water may represent the next layer in a triad of judgments. Water, they argue, has always been a symbolic instrument, cleansing, drowning, reshaping, revealing. Communities directly affected by the new storms describe emotional reactions similar to those experienced during the Texas flood, fear mixed with disbelief, followed by an unsettling sense of recognition. Many note that the storms seem to form with precision, striking the most unprepared regions as though exposing human vulnerability at its weakest points. With water rising in unexpected places, with storms appearing out of drought, with pressure systems behaving like fractured machinery, more Americans now believe the nation is experiencing stacked judgments, not isolated events, but a cascading sequence unfolding across the sea, the sky, and the land. Each element moving in concert, each disaster echoing the last, each sign pointing toward a pattern too deliberate to dismiss. In this view, the Texas catastrophe was not just a tragedy, it was the first warning of a cycle now escalating. As reports spread across the nation of shifting land, altered skies, trembling ground, and unexplained spiritual manifestations, one question begins to dominate conversations in churches, research centers, and ordinary households. What happens when separate signs begin to align, not as isolated anomalies, but as synchronized movements pointing toward a single, unfolding narrative? For months, observers treated each event as its own mystery, its own puzzle. But now analysts notice a deeper symmetry. Environmental disruptions emerging alongside spiritual encounters, unusual atmospheric patterns coinciding with moments of mass prayer, and sudden bursts of natural force appearing in regions long considered stable. It is as though physical creation and the unseen realm are responding to the same invisible command, two worlds, echoing one proclamation. Theologians describe this moment as convergence, a rare point in history when natural and supernatural realms move in tandem. Ancient prophecies hinted at such periods, not as random chaos, but as cycles of awakening periods when nations are shaken to reveal what lies beneath their foundations. In this interpretation, the signs are not punishments, but invitations, a call for reflection, for humility, for recognizing that